Wednesday the 2nd.
Yeah.
Wednesday the 2nd of June. So June began a couple of days ago, right? Yesterday was 1st June, which was a Tuesday.
Yes, and
it feels weird. You know why? Because business festival started yesterday, 1st June. So you think that was Monday. So it's a bit.
But June has 5 weeks, which is not a bad thing.
So long. It's only 30 days, but it has 5
But
weeks.
there's a bigger issue,
which is
the rains have not started.
We've been preparing.
Go for it.
I read that story for
every
you.
year since I started this work. In May, in May we have a lot of rains.
Yeah.
So we do the family month.
Yeah.
The family day out has rains disrupting it.
Yeah.
This whole May I didn't see any rain. Now we are in June. Imagine people who are planting stuff across the country.
Yes.
And this is not just an Accra issue. So here we are thinking about preparing for flooding in Accra. And the rains are not even coming.
I spoke to a serious farmer on Saturday. And he says maize we will struggle brutally.
It's serious.
He says we will struggle brutally.
And add galamsey to the fact
he
of
says,
the whole equation.
He says the rains are just not helping. So normally he does a lot of green peppers as well. So I asked him, what's up? Can I get it? He said, look, I'm not even trying. The rains
it's a
are
serious
not
issue.
helping me.
It's a serious issue. Even yesterday, somebody sent me a weather warning that was going to rain.
The
rain didn't come.
It didn't come.
Rain, we beg. Rain,
but it's not like we've not been for one. The meteor agency told us 3 weeks ago that we'll have very low rains.
Hey, Charlie, you know we still do rain for agriculture.
Yeah.
So without rain, we need to pray for rain.
But what we also ask, better before I start,
yes.
You know, we have to thank the grill master who brought us the kebab.
Oh,
Erikus Anara.
He was amazing.
Erikus Anara.
He brought some nice kebab a couple of days ago.
Yes. He's the one who does the kebab at the officers' mess at the 37 Military Hospital.
Hey.
10 a.m. kebab.
He brought
10
a
a.m.
whole,
Hot 10 a.m. kebab. Ask Abeku.
He brought a consignment. So good morning to him.
Thank you very much, Erikus Anara. Front page of the Daily Graphic. Uphold your integrity. President charges journalists. VCs risk 20 years imprisonment over unapproved courses. Campaign launched to boost domestic tourism.
Times at Africa Journalist Leaders Conference, President raps media, says criticism is not attack on press freedom. Also, 100 million Ghana cedis boost for tourism ministry. Boy 12 murdered at shrine. 3 arrested and others on the run. And the Ghana Health Service is worried over the decline in breastfeeding.
Front page of the Daily Guide. Indum's $100 million transfers pop up in U.S. court. Free speech can't be undermined, and it's the president speaking to leaders of various journalism associations. SHS graduate kills dad in Tema. 19 witnesses for coup plotters. Case starts June 8.
The Chronicle. Ambulance turns into cement haulage truck. Ghana Ambulance Service promises full probe. Also, Kufuado says, I discontinued the trial of Kofi Kumsen and others. Kumasi Mayor tells competitor, I will sue you for defamation. And Achimota School to appeal against High Court ruling.
The front page of the Informer also has the ambulance story. It says, as complaints over lack of emergency vans intensify, ambulance now used to convey cement, cassava, others. Big story on the front page says, Sir John finally bids farewell.
The New Crusading Guide. Criticism doesn't mean attack on media freedom, says the president. Ipman accuses national security of smuggling oil, smuggling in quotes, okay? Akuoko Sapong praises Wembley Sports Complex CEO for Agogo AstroTurf project, okay? And we know the man sitting there. Chief disappears in Takoradi.
Hey,
dear.
How is that even possible?
Okay.
Front page of the Herald newspaper. Herald is very hard on education this morning. Achimota School adamant on admission of Rasta students. Agongo's lawyer suggests trial judges prejudice. Also on the front page of the same paper, Education Minister sends kids to private senior high school. Runs from messy free SHS policy. Adongo reveals Eduboahin's involvement in conflict of interest.
The Today newspaper, SC judge backs PPP's position on special prosecutor, and the judge in question is Justice Yao Pao. Rasta Motown case. School runs to Supreme Court after High Court's ruling.
Front page of the Ghanaian Publisher newspaper, a lot of business headlines there. ICOMS rakes in 18 billion Ghana cedis in 11 and a half months. ADB wins 1D1F Financial Service Provider Award, and there's also the Ipman story you read on the front page of the new publisher.
The Finder, critiquing work of journals, not an attack on media. The president urges media to accept criticism in good faith. Also, ADB wins One District One Factory Financial Service Provider of the Year award. Rise in tobacco use among young female adults is worrying. That's from the FDA. Trial of alleged coup plotters starts on June 8th. An innovative initiative to promote domestic tourism launch.
And finally, from me, Bernard, the front page of the Daily Statesman, school feeding coordinator threatens to discipline caterers. State calls witnesses in coup plotters case, and the president's address to journalists also makes the front page of the paper, where he says journalists not above criticisms.
CitiNewsroom.com, vetting of deputy ministerial nominees begins today. Also, you can appeal but be open to mediation. Yeah, upon to Achimota School. Meanwhile, Shatawale apologizes to contractor to escape suit for assault and defamation. And medical lab scientists strike over stalemate at CAT called off. In other stories, mechanics repairing our ambulances used it to purchase cement. This is the ambulance service. CitiBusinessNews.com. Participants laud Ghana's progress in building a cashless economy. This is City Business Festival. Also, investment in cybersecurity critical for a formidable digital economy. This is Ebo Richardson. In other stories, a Greek infrastructure key to ensuring economic growth. This is Peter Quote. Well, the rains are not coming. We'll find out what that means for that projection. MyJournalline.com, lead story, Achimota to appeal court order to admit 2 Rasta students. Also, obey court ruling on Rasta students. NAT urges members at Achimota School. Meanwhile, lab scientists call off strike after parliamentary committee meets them. And opinion leaders turn in prophetess who assisted couple to bury their son alive. Star FM is leading with Shatawale. Apologizes to contractor after assault on staff. Also, withdraw Black Star brokerage as government book runner before vetting Adongo to Dubuahin. And GSS recruiting census agents on partisan lines. This is Savannah NDC. Lots of stories. If you go to GNA, Ghana, GAMLS call of their strike. Government allocates an additional 100 million to tourism industry. And do not sacrifice Africa's future for any consideration. This is the president to the media. I think that's a good call. Let's get into the details.
Okay, should we start with education? Lots happening
Yes,
in
in
education. I have two
education as well.
education stories for you. So I will start with Achimota.
Yes.
Page 46 of the Daily Graphic has that story. The Board of Governors of Achimota School has said it disagrees with the ruling of an Accra High Court which directed the school on Monday to admit the 2 Rastafarian students earlier denied admission. The board has consequently directed its lawyers to appeal against the ruling that compels the school to admit the 2 dreadlock-wearing students. Quote, the school board disagrees with the ruling of the court, said in a statement yesterday. The president of the Old Achimotan Association, Professor Nestaiti, told the Daily Graphic that the association supported all the actions of the school board, of the school's board in relation to the judgment. Quote, OAA's position is to support all the actions deemed necessary by the school's board. However, lawyers of the 2 students, Tyrone Iras Magai and Oheneban Krabia, are expected to serve a letter on the authorities of the school today as proof of the ruling by the court to admit the 2 students. So we'll keep an eye on that.
Upon a private legal practitioner is advising that Chimota School openly. He's basically saying the school should be open to negotiation, even if they want to appeal or mediation. He says that in an interview witness, he says the interest of the boys must be placed above all other considerations. Now he says the appeal does not stop further negotiations and mediation processes for the purpose of engaging all parties to resolve the matter. In all of this, the Children's Act, the Constitution, and the relevant Act state that we should put the welfare and the advancement of the child's future above, because that is superior to any other consideration. Now, if you go to my journal line, there's also a story here where the Ghana NAT, Ghana Association of Teachers, they are asking their members at Achimota School to obey the court ruling. So the Ghana Association of Teachers, NAT, has urged its members at Achimota School to obey the court ruling regarding the admission of the students. According to Association General Secretary Thomas Musa, this ruling will not affect teacher-student relationship if handled in the right manner. This happened after the governing board of the school announced its decision to appeal the ruling of the Human Rights Court. Then, Child's Rights International is also saying that the students have to be allowed to go to school pending the appeal. So let me just read that for you as well. Bright Appear says Achimota School has to admit the students even while the appeal process goes on, and he's been advocating for them to be admitted right from the onset. He was also speaking to the media. Let me just read the story. It says, Executive Director of Child Rights International, Bright Appear, says an Accra High Court ruling ordering Achimota to admit the 2 students is still in force. despite the school's decision to appeal. He says once a ruling has been given and all things that are required for the fulfillment of that ruling for me should continue, and then we would ensure that the lawyer for Tyrone enforces that, and whatever we need to do to ensure their fundamental rights are protected. So this is something we should keep an eye on. It's a developing story.
Now, there's a lot happening in the educational sector, Bernard. Let me just wrap that up before Kokwi comes in. So the Education Ministry is rolling out a scheme to rank senior high schools, and that's on page 45 of the Daily Graphics. According to the story, the ministry has rolled out 2 ranking schemes for all senior high schools in the country to place each institution in its proper perspective and to fully assess the free SHS policy. The first, which is to be the national rankings, is expected to rank each school on the scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the highest score, while the second, dubbed similar schools ranking, will place schools with equal infrastructure and grading in the same category for fair assessment. On the same page of the paper, the moderator of the Presbyterian Church is urging teachers to accept postings to rural areas. Now, if you come to page 16 of the paper, vice chancellors are risking 20 years imprisonment over unapproved courses. It is now an offense with severe penalties for a tertiary institution to advertise or run a program for which it has no accreditation. This follows the coming into force of the Education Regulatory Board Act 2020 Act 1023. The penalties include either paying a fine of not more than 240,000 Ghana cedis, or the vice chancellor, rector of the institution concerned going to prison for up to 20 years or both. So that is some information for you. And if you go to the page 2 of the Herald, the paper is alleging via Kwame Alovi, a former president of NAGRAT, that the education minister has sent his kids to a private school because he wants to avoid the messy free senior high school. So according to Kwame Alovi, the children of the current education minister have been sent to a school called International Community School.
Meanwhile, SHS2 Green Track students return to school after a 2-month break. So lots of education stories.
And one more on the back page of Ghanaian Times. Valco Trust Fund wants to eliminate schools under trees as part of an effort to rid the country of schools under trees. They're undertaking a 5-year construction plan to build schools across the country, but they are trying to do this in conjunction with some other stakeholders. The schools are estimated to be more than 5,000 still operating under trees. So more Ghanaian children are attending KG and primary school because of capitation grants, school feeding, etc. So of course, this the influx.
Take me to the Chronicle ambulance story.
Yes,
because that's a bizarre one.
It's crazy.
Ambulance used to fetch cement and other things.
I'm telling you.
One
of the 307 ambulances procured by the Akufo-Addo government in its first term under the One Constituency, One Ambulance initiative has been turned into a cement haulage truck. A video went viral yesterday. It showed 2 men busily loading building materials into the life-saving vehicle. According to checks by the Chronicle, this happened in Gomwa East District. The originator of the video told the paper that it was taken at Triple X area after Budumburam, close to the forestry checkpoint. About 16 cement bags were counted being loaded into the ambulance. The ambulance had its engine running. The traffic indicator lights were on. He said he couldn't see the constituency name written on the ambulance because of the way it was parked, but he gave the registration number to the ambulance service. They checked their system and they saw that it belonged to the Sege constituency.
Look at Sege. Look at
Can
Kasua.
you imagine?
It's almost like from Kring to Krank.
So this is what's happening there. The preliminary investigations say that the vehicle was sent to a garage for servicing, and after the repairs was when the mechanic clandestinely took the ambulance for the operation of conveying cement.
Can you imagine?
So they've reported the case to the police.
This is serious, we need to commend the guy who took the video.
Yeah.
Is this like a regular mechanic or the
explanation is given. They say this
that sold the things to us?
The statement said that the ambulance is in the custody of Service Ghana Auto Group and therefore not being used by the paramedics of the ambulance service, and it's not part of the ambulance fleet at the time it was being serviced. So as Umar Sanders spoke to the PRO of the service who tried to explain, they issued a statement who also trying to explain. So we'll give you that. Good news though is the medical lab scientist strike is over.
Yes.
This is CitiNewsroom.com. The PR officer of Ghana Association of Medical Lab Scientists, Dr. Denise Edu Jesse, has told Citi News that the strike by members of the association at Konfanoche in the Ashanti region and other parts of the country has been called off. It says the decision was taken on Tuesday, June 1, after a meeting with the Parliamentary Select Committee on Health, which has promised to address their concerns. This is really good. Parliament. Yes. We can confirm that the strike by the respective regions of the Ghana Association of Medical Science has been called off today at Parliament when the leaders of the professional body met the Parliamentary Select Committee on Health and put their issues before them. Parliament also agreed that we should report back to them to get the matter resolved. And so the leadership, based on the meeting held at Oceanic Hotel in Accra, has agreed and expects that members from tomorrow, which is today, will resume work. Edu Jesse told Citi Newsroom.
Great. Okay. On health, Ghana Health Service is very worried because there's a decline in breastfeeding. Now, this is important because we know how breastfeeding affects the health of children. And they are saying that if we don't do something about this quickly, we're going to be seeing an effect on our healthcare system. Optimal breastfeeding can save Ghana over $5.8 million, money which is spent in healthcare costs, and it can generate more than $594 million for the economy, which is 1.5% of our gross net income. So there are a lot of issues, though, to deal with this. Breastfeeding is not a simple thing. For those of us who have done it, we know.
Yeah.
We know. There's a reason it's declining.
Let me tell you about the president who has been addressing a lot of issues regarding the press on page 2 of the Daily Statesman. And the headline says that critique of work of journalists is not attack on press freedom. President Addo Akufo-Addo yesterday noted that subjecting the work of the media to critique by citizens and officialdom cannot in any way be described as an attack on media freedom. The president, however, said an attack on the media is when journalists are physically attacked or prevented from doing their work, something he said must be condemned by all. He made these remarks when he delivered the keynote address at the African Journalist Leaders Conference held at the Alisa Hotel in Accra. President Akufo-Addo said there seems to be an emerging narrative which is being preferred by some in Ghana that critiquing the work of a journalist constitutes an attack on media freedom. However, insisted that cannot certainly be described as an attack on media freedom.
We are talking about over 40 incidents of attacks on journalists since 2016 January. So that's what we are talking about.
Charlie.
We are not talking about criticism of journalists. We are saying that journalists are physically attacked, particularly by people who work in the security services, and it's documented from January till 2016 to now. So which is, I think that's where the focus should be. Nobody's saying we shouldn't be criticized. We are saying that we should work in safety because journalism is not a crime. Anyway, let's come back to the Chronicle.
Yeah, more on what he said. He said, I discontinued the trial of Kofi Kumsin. He says he took up the responsibility to discontinue pending prosecutions under the criminal libel law against Kofi Kumsin, Tommy Thompson, and Eben Kwaku. He said the trio were being prosecuted for various publications against personalities of the then government. And he said, quote, I'm proud of the modest role I played in the process of the repeal of the criminal libel law. As the Attorney General who piloted the repeal through Parliament, I was also responsible for the discontinuation of the then pending prosecutions under the criminal libel law of the said journalists. He said, even as one of the public figures most persistently vilified in sections of the Ghanaian media, who ironically was a principal actor in the repeal of the law, I continue to insist that its repeal was necessary in the public interest in our emerging democracy, and I prefer a boisterous, reckless media to a supine one.
So let me go to this story, this bizarre story. Shatawale apologizes to contractor to escape suit for assault and defamation. Now, story says dancehall artist Charles Niama Mensah, known in showbiz as Shatawale, has rendered a public apology to the project manager at Oswald Investments, Kenneth Aqua, for allegedly ordering some persons to physically assault him and other road construction workers. This comes after Mr. Aqua threatened to take legal action against Shatawale if he fails to apologize publicly for assault and defamation. According to the project manager, Shatawale was ganged up with some persons believed to be his boys to attack them for preventing him from using a road which was under construction at Ajingano near East Legon. Shatawale, however, denied the allegation that he had assaulted the road contractor and his employees. But in a sudden U-turn, the controversial artist has been seen in a video gone viral publicly apologizing to the contractor in what looks like a desperate attempt to avoid being sued, as the contractor had threatened. Shatta, in apologizing for how things happened, said, quote, I believe that there is some news circulating around about me having a fight with some contractors. The man in question is my dad, my friend, somebody that I always wanted to meet, and so it's unfortunate that things have happened this way. I also want to say sorry to Kennedy for everything that happened, and I believe he will find a place in his heart to forgive me because it's Ghana and we are one people, and that's how we need to live. Anything that has happened, I believe God will take care of the rest.
Okay, some crime stories. A 12-year-old boy has been murdered at a shrine. This was in Dogokope in the Volta region. His name is Cornelius Negble, and he was said to have been kidnapped from his home during a funeral on May 20th. He was taken to the shrine and he was slaughtered for money-making rituals. So the police obviously have deposited the body. Apparently he was decapitated as well. I mean,
you know, there's a related story here. Opinion leaders have turned in a prophetess who assisted a couple to bury their son alive. That story came from yesterday, myjournalline.com. Presiding prophetess of Christ Faith Word Church International at Gomwa Eshiem Aman Cancer placed on the wanted list in the case of murder of 2-year-old Kwame Adobo, has been arrested. The 64-year-old was brought to a Sikuma police station by some opinion leaders at Gomoa Ejumako. Police at Sikuma subsequently detained the suspect to assist with investigations. Now, the father, Paul, was put before the Bremen Sikuma Magistrate Court on Monday and remanded in police custody. The court, presided over by Justice Arabanunu, ordered the suspect to reappear on August 31. Mother of the deceased has been granted bail by the police because she's nursing a 3-week-old baby. The couple said the prophetess convinced them their child, who could neither walk nor talk, was a stray child and had to be killed. And they went on to do the killing and the burying, attempted to bury the baby, not killing, burying the baby alive or something. They tried to bury the... So basically, a tenant of the couple said at midnight on Monday, Paul and Mamiata and the fetish priestess dug a grave and buried the 2-year-old alive. Charlie,
she was not a fetish priestess, she was a prophetess.
Yes. Now let's do two kind of quick things. Now on the economy.
Yeah, I have a story for you.
Yes.
On the economy with the banking sector cleanup. Now, if you go to page 9 of the daily guide, collapsed banks still keeping 93% of assets.
Seriously?
Yes. Government has been able to recoup only 1.7 billion Ghana cedis out of a total of 25 billion Ghana cedis in assets belonging to banks, which collapsed in 2017 under the financial sector cleanup exercise. Dr. Ernest Addison, governor of the Bank of Ghana, who disclosed this to journalists in Accra on Monday at a press conference, said the difficulty in regaining the assets had been fueled by litigation by the defunct banks. Quote, things are not going as fast as we would want them to. A lot of the commercial banks operating in the country were found to be going through difficult times and were put under insolvency. So yeah.
Now, this is a quick one from the Citi Business Festival. Fintech business now much easier in Ghana. This is the IT Consortium CEO of IT Consortium, Rumibuje, has highlighted the critical role the Ghana Interbank Payment and Settlement System GIPS has played in Ghana's financial or fintech space since inception in May 2007. Speaking on the Citi Business Festival virtual forum on TV, Mr. Buje pointed out that the centralized infrastructure provided by GIPS has made services offered by firms like IT Consortium much easier than in most parts of Africa. Now, there's a final one here. Peter Corte says, agric and infrastructure are key to ensuring economic growth for the remainder of this year. Now, I read this story because the rains are not coming. Professor of Economics at ISEP, Professor Peter Corte, says the economy will grow significantly if the government focuses on agriculture, infrastructure, and construction for the rest of the year. Now, the problem is that we are not getting enough rain, so agri production may suffer. So that means government is left with infrastructure and construction to meet its growth target. We'll deal with that later on if we have time. Thank you, Kokui. Thank you, Godfrey. We're coming back with Citi.